ACOTAR 1 reread has been complete, and it is time to get into a discussion on all of my thoughts and feelings that I had about this book from a Christian perspective. So I am really excited to hop into this first super in-depth guide with you guys. This is the first super in-depth guide that I will have ever done. So if you have any feedback, please feel free to let me know, because I've only done short versions of this and I've never actually fully tabbed up a book like this and then walked through it with somebody. But first, a little bit of an overview on how this is going to go is I want to be super clear that this is not me trying to tell you this is a Christian book. That is not what I'm doing. I have seen some people comment on some of my other short form stuff and be like, why are they trying to make ACOTAR Christian? I'm not at all. I am a Christian who just so happens to love fantasy books. And so I am just giving you guys my perspective on said secular fantasy book from my Christian perspective. That is all that I am doing. But I am in no way trying to say this is a Christian book at all. Just kind of relating some things to Christianity and what I picked out. But the main point of this video really is to give you guys a guide on what's in this book without being super spoiler heavy. So the first section of this video is going to be giving you guys a content guide. I'm going to talk about everything that could potentially bother you within this book with specifics without being plot spoiler heavy. So to be clear, because I know some people have different views on what a spoiler is and what a spoiler isn't, for me, this is going to be, there are no plot context spoilers, there's going to be no names or anything like that. So if there is a specific scene I'm talking about, you don't know who it's happening to, just an overview of all the content in this that could potentially bother you. All the stuff that I point out is not things that necessarily bothered me. Honestly, this book really didn't bother me at all. There wasn't anything in it where I was like, ooh, like that makes me feel uncomfortable and convicted, but I am going to talk to you about all the points that I think people could potentially feel upset over. After we go through that, I am going to go through a full kind of walkthrough of my thoughts and feelings about book one, and that is going to have spoilers in it, but only for book one. I'm not going to reference anything in any of the other books in the series. I have read them all. Right now, we're just going to talk about this, and then at the very, very end, there are a couple points I'm going to make that are going to talk about kind of the interconnections with the other series and kind of my thoughts and theories, if you will, on that. I've never been a huge theory girl, but I do have a few, of course. But I will make it super clear when I'm transitioning from each of those sections so that you can pause, save for later, subscribe, and come back to finish the video. Let's hop into our content guide on A Court of Thorns and Roses, just book one, and I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know before going into it. So starting off strong, we're going to start with spice. Honestly, I don't think this book is super spicy. For me, I would rate it on like a 1.5, which is like between cracked door and open door. The scenes in this are very short. I think the longest one is 2 pages. They do not go into crazy descriptors. There are some mild descriptors, but it doesn't get excessive in this book. There's also not a lot of scenes. I do have a skipping guide screenshot if you would like to save this so that you know where to skip. When it comes to if I would suggest reading this book, if you're somebody who reads absolutely no spice at all, then I would say no, don't read this book. There is some mild spice in it, so that is something to note. Total though, there are only going to be 3 scenes and they are not all full-blown intimate sex scenes. Some of them are just like heavy makeouts, but they do get a little bit descriptive, so I do put them in the spice guide. But overall, the romance in this book, honestly, I think is one of the most mild parts of this book. I was actually kind of surprised because I feel like I remember it being a lot more than it was, but I mean, you don't get any sort of romance at all for almost the first 200 pages. So if you're going into this book for a romance, I wouldn't. Like, the intrigue for this book is not the romantic element at all. It's definitely the world building and the character building, all of the magic and things like that. So let's hop into those things because that's pretty much all I have to say about the romance at this point. Continuing on the spoiler-free section, we're going to get into the biggest part of this book, which is going to be our kind of magic system, world building, god system, religion, kind of how all of those work together and mesh within this book. So first, I want to say we are placed in a completely fictional realm in this. This is a fantasy series. This is not placed in like modern day world at all. It is completely fictional realm, if you will, is what I like to say. But within this fictional realm, you are going to have 2 different main areas. So you're going to have your human lands and then you're going to have your like fairy fae lands. And within the fairylands, there are like 7 different regions, if you will, that are all kind of ruled by different people. And then there's kind of like a separate one from those that are still considered the fairy realms that are kind of like the bad guys. And then we have just our human realms, which is just a little bit more general. We don't spend the bulk of our book there, but it is important and mentioned. And we have kind of our 2 different sides that have their different prejudices and views on the fairies and the humans and what they think about each other. And that's where a lot of this comes into the book. So in the human realm, basically they believe that fairies are all bad, okay? So we have kind of this weird power dynamic with believing in the fairies. Do we not believe in the fairies? They don't really know. But with that, they don't really have any sort of like god system or people that they're praying to or things like that. The only sort of religious element that was solely in the human lands was there were these group of girls that are called Children of the Blessed. It was kind of giving Handmaid's Tale vibes, but they are essentially like fairy sympathizers that are trying to tell other humans that fairies aren't that bad, but they're like religious culty vibes. So there is that, but they're a very small part of the story, honestly. And then on the flip side, you have your fairies who believe that humans are just like weak mortal beings and they don't like people. With this, you are going to get some more religious aspects within the fairy side of the realm and kind of their beliefs. So this is obviously where the magic system is going to kick in and things like that. But when it comes to religion or gods, there's going to be 2 main components to this. So one is going to be this deity-like figure that they like occasionally pray to. It's very few and far between. It's mentioned like twice in this book. I will say it does get mentioned more in other books, but there's that one deity-like being. And then you have your kind of magical elemental thing, which is the cauldron. And essentially the cauldron, it's not like the classic, like a witch is like sitting here stirring a pot in a cauldron. That's not how it is. This magical cauldron is basically what like created the realm, and it like used magic to do that. So it's not like a person, but it is something that is mentioned, and they'll be like, oh, like if someone's lucky or they have good luck, they're cauldron blessed, things like that. So that's kind of your religious element. Ultimately, it is super, super fictional. It's not based in like modern day witchcraft or anything. Super, super unique overall in that aspect. But then when we get into the magic a little bit, this is obviously going to revolve around the fairies. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So basically you have different levels of fairy, which I won't go into too much because I think it's fun to kind of discover that as you're reading it. But fairies do use magic that they essentially get from the earth, like the earth charges them up so that they're able to use their magic more. These are going to be very simple things that you're going to see for the most part. Stuff like glamoring somebody so that they look different, or cleaning up a mess with like the wave of a hand, making items disappear. There are a couple different beings that can like shapeshift into like a different beast or something like that. And so that's kind of the general magic system that you find out is not actually like this big bad scary thing that the humans are terrified of. So something to note, there is magic being regularly used throughout this series. You do also have evil magic. So there is one singular instance in this book that you could argue is witchcrafty. There is an evil character and they use an unholy potion that they stole to basically manipulate and do bad things with. It's never seen as good. It's not a good thing at all. So that's something to note, is you do have people that are kind of evil and abusing the magic. For me, this is, I feel like, an important thing to note. I don't personally have a huge issue with there being dark stuff or dark magic or evil people in books and series. I think that there's a lot of evil people in the world today, and a lot of evil happens just like on the regular. And I think as Christians, if we are trying too hard to just like shield ourselves from anything that's potentially bad, we're just living in a false reality, because the world is super dark and it's super sad, and we are all filled with sin in some aspect. Now, if you are internalizing all of these bad and evil things, that's, I think, somewhere where a line is drawn. But for me, I don't particularly need to like make sure I stay away from anything that's potentially bad or evil, because in this book, there is a very clear sense of good and evil and fighting good and evil, which is of course all over the Bible and doesn't make something in a whole super bad. So little disclaimer, did just want to throw that in there. Moving from the magic system kind of into our creatures and monsters system. So as this book progresses, you do get introduced to more and more magical beings and creatures and things like that. I'm not going to go into super depth because I do feel like that is a little bit too much spoiler territory, but just know that there are like evil, scary monsters that are kind of being fought throughout the book. And then there are also magical bargains that do happen. I am again not going to go into this too much because I do think it gets too much into spoiler territory, but you do have kind of magical bond between people and they're typically marked with some sort of tattoo. You need to read to figure that one out. Then for our cussing, honestly, it's pretty light. There's not a lot of cussing in this. The main forms of cussing that you're going to get are like our characters say what the hell or go to hell and stuff like that. But other than that, there's very few instances where there's a ton of charged language. There are instances, but it's in no way, shape, or form super distracting at all. And then there are just 2 other scenes. So these are going to get scene specific. If you are somebody who does not want any sort of scene spoilers of what's happening, then I wouldn't listen to the next few minutes of this. But I do think these are important scenes that could potentially bother people. So they're good to note in case you do want to know that going in. The first one is going to be this ceremony that happens called Calanmai. It happens on the night of the Great Rite, which is basically this celebration night that these fairies have, and there's dancing and drinking and things like that. And with that, one of the ruling beings essentially is going to take like a lot of magic into their body from the earth, and then they end up picking someone to mate with for the night, which as you can imagine means sleep with them. It is a willing participant. It's not like an unwilling participant or anything like that, but that is kind of like a weird, like folklore-y, fae-esque thing that could potentially bother you. And then the other thing is towards the end of the book, we do have a character who is being basically drugged in a sense. They're being made to drink fairy wine and they get like very, very drunk to the point where they don't really remember what's happening. And when they are drunk, they are dancing in a like risque, unmodest outfit in front of a bunch of people. And there are underlying reasons for this whole scene, but I can't talk about them without like majorly spoiling stuff. So that's all I'm going to say. It's not seen as good, it's seen as a bad thing for sure. But that is going to be my full content guide for you guys. And now we're going to be transitioning into my thoughts, rereading the series and specific plot things about book 1 only. So if you have not read book 1, please pause this, save it for later and come back. Guys, it was so difficult for me to do that overview just now and like not spoil anything, but honestly it was kind of fun and it was a little bit of a challenge for me. But now let's talk about literally all of my thoughts and feelings about this book and the things that I pointed out in my reread. We are only going to be talking about book 1 here, so if you've read only book 1, you are safe right now. But the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is some of the Christian themes, because I did find them a lot earlier in the series than later in the series. And the first one is going to be kind of how we immediately establish that like keeping your promises is important. In the beginning of the book, we have Feyre talking like in her internal monologue, just kind of about how she made this promise to her mother and it is very important that she keeps it. And even though it's hard, she's continuing to persevere and do this really hard thing because she did make a promise to someone. And I think that is a really cool, wonderful thing that we can see. It also kind of established her moral compass pretty early on, that like she is a woman of integrity and like she doesn't like lying and she doesn't like not holding to her word and things like that. So I thought that was really good and I loved kind of picking that out in this reread. And then another thing really early on was the kind of overview and overarching theme of hope, which was really cool, and it actually got brought up later in the series by Feyre, which I thought was awesome. But her dad, essentially, when she is like about to leave, tells Feyre like, let Nesta hope that she can like be in love with this guy and that he's the guy for her, because like we all need hope and sometimes hope is more important than food or water or shelter and things like that. And I thought that was just such a cool parallel that we can draw to Christianity, because sometimes things are really hard and they aren't going well, and sometimes we just literally have to remember that the only thing that matters is keeping our hope and faith in Jesus. And obviously that's not what's happening in this book. Like, it's not a Christian book, but just that concept of hope in the book was just really cool to read in a secular book, because it is something that is heavily derived from the Bible. Honestly, I had so much more fun reading this the second time than I did the first time. This is only the second time that I've read it, and I actually hated the first 300 pages the first time I read it. But this second time, having my context of the other books, I really, really enjoyed it, but we won't get into that quite yet. But honestly, the beginning, there's not too much other than those two Christian points that I wanted to point out. Really, we start getting into stuff when we get into the spring court and she is taken there by Tamlin and everything. My favorite part was remembering how fun Feyre and Lucian's relationship is in the beginning of this. I think I completely forgot just like how awesome they are, and I'm hoping that might be important for the new books that are coming out. But seeing how their relationship was formed and just how he like really didn't like her, and then they were kind of going back and forth with this like, we like hate each other but we're friends banter, and he was helping her with the cereal and everything. It was just so fun to read, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it a lot. I also, because I was focusing on it a lot, was pointing out and reading the different magical beings in this. So like the Bogue, the Puka, the Surreal, like all of those popping up so soon in the story. That was really cool, and I think I had a lot more of appreciation for kind of the world building and the creativity around the different monsters earlier on in the series than I did the first time that I read it. And kind of closing off that like initial her getting to the spring court when stuff kind of likes to pick up is the fairy that comes in with his wings cut off. Oh my gosh, I thought that was just like a lot and super emotional. I actually marked it as one of my like super emotional scenes. And it's when Tamlin is like saying his first prayer to essentially the cauldron or the mother for this fairy to like pass without pain and be welcomed into eternity. And it just was cool to see that like, while the humans didn't really have any reverence for like religion or afterlife and stuff like that, the fairies do, and the fairies are immortal. So it was really cool to see kind of that like switch. And within these prayers, I will say there is a lot of religiously charged language within them, but I didn't find any of it to be blasphemous towards Christianity at all. So just something to note there. And then we're going to get into a little more of like the relationship building between Feyre and Tamlin, which I thought was really great. And I really loved how their attraction to each other was built off of learning about each other and learning about each other's lands and kind of discovering all of these lies that they had believed about the other person's species. Essentially was just really cool to watch. I specifically loved when they were in the garden together and he specifically was talking about how it's so fascinating to see the different things that bring her joy. So in this moment, it's like the different flowers that were bringing her joy within the garden, and walking through that and seeing his mother's garden that his father built for her. And he's just saying how beautiful it is that she has this joy with her like such short of lifespan compared to obviously the Fae, which are immortal, and how he's drawn to that like aspect of her, which I think was cool because it's not like a lusty factor to their attraction. Like they're actually building this connection on a deeper level, which was fun. And then we also do within this kind of area of the book learn about the mating bond and how the mating bond is more serious than a marriage, but it's so rare to find your mate that it doesn't always happen. But Tamlin's parents were mates, and so they like had this beautiful ceremony, and that's where the garden came out of and everything. Then we get into Calanmai, or Calanmai. I don't know how you say it, but guys, freaking a lot, okay? First of all, Feyre's dumb. This is when I was like, oh, this dumb human. Like, she is dumb, which I don't feel like I fully grasped the first time, but my girl, oh my gosh, she is like thoroughly, for like a full page, grilled by Lucian. Don't leave your room, sis. It's not safe. And what does she do? She lasts like 2 hours and then leaves her freaking room. And like, obviously it had to happen for the plot, but like annoying, so dumb. If I was in a magical fairyland and someone told me not to leave my room because it's dangerous, I'd be barricading the door, okay? Nothing would get me out of that room. But of course, this had to happen because then she meets Rhysand. Rhysand. I know Rhysand is the technical way to say it, but I say both. I like Rhysand better. We meet him. He saves her from like these weird taloned people, fairy creatures that we don't like. And then he disappears. And then we have to wait a couple pages for him to come back. But after that, in between this, we get their first kiss. And this is kind of after their little like spicy moment in the hallway when she's sneaking around and he like bites her neck. Annoying. I just think it was so dumb. It was all her fault because she shouldn't have been out in the first place. A couple pages later, we have this sweet moment where they have their first kiss. I'm glad that they didn't have their first kiss in Calamite. That would have actually made me so freaking mad. But it's sweet because they have their first kiss, and then this is when she remembers what her dad was saying about having hope in the beginning. And she says, "My father once told me that I should let my sisters imagine a better life and a better world, and I told them that there was no such thing. I never understood because I couldn't believe that it was even possible until now." And then in her little internal monologue, she said, "It was the happiest moment of my life." And I just think that was so good. I loved that. And I have to be careful what I'm going to say. Because I've at this point only read this book. But it was great. And I appreciated that scene a lot. But then it's quickly ruined because freaking Rysand comes back and they have this scene at lunch where Lucian's trying to glamour her and Rysand sees right through it and it's this whole big deal. And then he basically is like, "I'm gonna send you home." And they're like, "Well, we still have a couple more days." And he's like, nope, she's being sent home. So I'm like, okay. She goes to get sent home and then they sleep together. At least that's what it implies they do, is they sleep together. It wasn't like super, super thorough. But for me, I'm like, there's two sides of the coin here, right? Because I'm like, you are literally sending her away. How dare you decide to sleep with her and then send her packing? But then on the other hand, we obviously know he wants her to fall in love. But I'm like, he's already made up his mind. Like she's going home. She's not going to fall in love with me. And he waits till like the last freaking second to tell her that he loves her. And I'm like, maybe if you would have done this a little bit earlier, then we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. And she would have actually had time to say it back. But no, of course not. That would be too easy. So like on one hand, I'm like, I get it. But then on the other hand, I'm like, how dare you? You're sending her away. Don't sleep with her and make her upset when you know. I mean, he's saying we'll see each other again someday. No. He is fully believing that they are never going to see each other again. So how dare he? That really made me upset. I'm not going to lie, guys. So then we go home, okay? We go back home and everything's weird. And we're talking about how she was with her aunt and nobody knows anything, but Nesta's being weird. I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys I don't like Nesta, okay? I haven't liked her since book 1. Not a fan. But we find out that she knows everything. The glamour didn't work on her for whatever reason because she's strong-willed and she has a strong mind is what they say. Through telling Nesta, decides that she has to go back and save Tamlin, but it's been days now. And of course the time is up because why would it be any other way? So now she goes back, we meet Alice, she finds out everything about the curse. And then we get into the best part of the book, which is the last 100 pages. I really do enjoy the last 100 pages of this. I think the trials are super fun. This was also some of the first trials that I had ever read in a fantasy series, so they have a little bit of a special place in my heart. We have the Wormy trial, as I like to call it. And I just think the Wormy trial was so fun and clever. Now, realistic? Absolutely not. I mean, I know I would be dead, but hey, a lot of people are a lot more athletic than I am, but we go through the trial, we get told the riddle, and let me tell you, the riddle, I know everybody's like, it's so obvious, it's love. I didn't get it the first time that I read this. I did not guess that it was love. And so this time going in knowing that it was love, and I'm reading this, and I'm like, I still don't think I'd get it. Even if my memory was wiped, I just am not a riddle girly, and I thought it was kind of hard, but I know a lot of people are like, no, that's stupid. It's so easy. Well, not for me, not for everyone, and not for our illiterate girl Feyre, okay? But this is kind of the point in the book where good and evil is like clearly established with Amarantha, which I thought was nice and fun. Like now you're seeing like, here are the evil, bad Fae, and then we have our morally gray area with Rhysand, and then we have our good Fae, which are like all the other courts at this point. Morally gray also with the Autumn Court because we know stuff that happened with Lucian. But I thought that this was good and it took a long time. Honestly, this book is a lot of world building. Those first 300 pages are really just kind of digging in with Prythian and the world building within that. So it was definitely a lot. But then we get into all the stuff with Rhysand and him coming after the first trial to heal her, and then all the painting that he does on her body and bringing her out and getting her drunk, helping her with the second trial, and it's just a lot. And obviously you're thinking, what is the motive here? But you do find out that kind of she is not only Tamlin's salvation for this whole thing, but she is literally going to decide if the entire fairy realm is doomed to be under this evil woman's rule or not. So it makes sense why he's helping her. Also, like, you see her physically and mentally just continue to be broken down and like beat down and depressed because Tamlin won't even look at her. And I know that he had a reason to, but I don't think it was valid. Like, if you are literally about to potentially witness your girl die by a worm, by these pokey spikes coming down from the ceiling, you think you would give her a glance. Like, my gosh, can you give her something? I don't know. I think that there was definitely ways that he could have done that throughout that wouldn't have tipped Amarantha off, and it just made me really mad for her because it's like, she is literally coming down here and risking her life for you, my man, and you are giving her nothing until the very end when they're having this moment. They start making out, and obviously her paint gets smeared everywhere. My gosh, guys, I wanted to literally beat him. Are you kidding me? You are taking this not to confess your love, to quickly have sex one more time? Now they don't, because Mr. Rysand interrupts them, and then he has to kiss her to cover up what this freaking mess of a Tamlin just did. It was just ridiculous, okay? That whole scene, Tamlin really screwed that one up in my opinion. I mean, maybe it's the end of the world. You think she's gonna die. You're like, I just want to kiss her. I just want to be with her one more time. Maybe. Sure, she's still, like, I don't know, guys. That just made me really annoyed, but it's whatever, okay? So we get to the final trial. She kills fake Tamlin. I mean, not fake Tamlin, but Tamlin, who has this heart of stone, which I think was insane that she got that from what Alice and Lucian and everyone were saying, but she couldn't get the riddle. And listen, I didn't get the riddle either. So, like, I'm not passing judgment here, but that was insane and ridiculous that she was able to come to that conclusion that his heart is actually stone. What? Come on, guys. And then we have the big ending. Amarantha goes and gets killed, and then she dies, and she's like in Rysand's mind at the end there, which we can assume is because of the bargain that they made. Oh, we didn't even touch on the bargain. Yeah, they have the bargain to see each other once a week. And she gets brought back to life because she gets a drop of this sparkly magic from every single High Lord, and then now she's High Fae. Woohoo! So exciting. Also, where's Jurian? I don't remember, actually. Like, I have no recollection of, like, who took Jurian, where he's at. So I'm excited to continue on and figure that out because I don't remember. Which was also crazy, just having him in the ring. Like, insane stuff. And then Rysand and her have their little heartfelt goodbye, and you do get a little bit more into Rysand, like, why he's doing what he did. But again, does it justify it? I don't know. That's a big question that a lot of people had for me going into this reread. Like, actually look at Rysand's actions. But that wraps up the book. I would say that I'd give this a 4 stars. I think the first time I read it, I gave it more of like a 3 stars. It's definitely a solid 4.5 for me. Definitely wasn't perfect. It's a lot of world building. It's slow. The romance isn't heavy, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. And now let's quickly get into a slight spoiler section for the entire series. All right, guys, it's time to talk about how this relates to all the other books. And when I say all the other books, I mean every book Sarah J Maas has written. So with that being said, if you haven't read any of them, just beware there could potentially be a spoiler in this. Now, there's not going to be a spoiler in it for everything, but I am going to be referencing the series, just so you know. First of all, Feyre is talking about in the dungeon how there are, at the end, how there are these forgotten gods that she can't remember their name. And I'm like, are they the gods from Throne of Glass? Because I think that would be really cool. I think they have to be, but obviously we don't know. We find out more stuff with like the Bone Carver in book 2. Obviously that has a connection to Throne of Glass, things like that. But I don't know. It just was a little cool potential glimmer and potential foreshadowing that I thought was fun. Big point that I wanted to make within this that I'm curious about people's thoughts are, whenever they are saying like, what the hell, go to hell, anytime that hell is referenced, it's with 2 L's. But in Crescent City, it's with 1 L. So is that because they're different places? Like, I don't, did she maybe just mess up and not know that Crescent City was going to be a thing yet and had decided to just drop an L when she did Crescent City? I don't know. But I'm curious if like hell in Crescent City is like the same thing that they're referencing in this, because I feel like it should be the same thing that they're referencing in this, but I don't know if it actually is. I do think that the Suriel is Kaltane. I know we're kind of rapid firing here, but I have always thought this, but reading this book, I think it even more now. The serial says on page 128, I am a member of no court. I am older than the High Lords, older than Prithian, and older than the bones of this world. Probably because she's from a different world, aka Throne of Glass. And when she blew up in Throne of Glass, she ended up here somehow in the future from like where she was. That's my theory. I think that she's Kaltane. I don't know how she couldn't be Kaltane. But of course, we'll never find out because we know that the serial dies. And then the last piece, of course, Rysand. Guys, it was a lot, okay? Knowing everything that I know from like his reasoning and like reading this now the second time through, knowing that like he knows that she's his mate. Rough, first of all, that he had to do all of that. Do I think it's justified, the things that he did? I wouldn't say justified is the right word. I would say that yes, there is an excuse and it's forgivable. I wouldn't necessarily say justified, but like he literally, everything that he did was to keep her safe. Like it really was. And like imagine you're meeting your mate for the first time. One, doesn't know that she's your mate. Two, she's literally with your arch nemesis and they're like madly in love. And she is literally about to sacrifice her life for a man that's not you. Rough. Hate that for him. I don't know. I thought it was really good and I'm super excited to read book 2 knowing that. I've physically read book 2 only once, but I have audiobooked it twice. So I've done 3 reads of A Court of Mist and Fury. That will be my first physical reread that I'm doing next. I don't know how long it's going to take me to get there, guys. I'm just going to be so for real and honest with you. This took me like a good 5 days to get through because I was thoroughly tabbing her. And this is a lot shorter than A Court of Mist and Fury. And I feel like A Court of Mist and Fury just has so much more depth to it than this does. And the plot just like expands so much. I can't even think about when we get into A Court of Wings and Ruin because that's even more. I'm super excited to be doing this series. I will for sure make sure that I have all of my reread review guides like this and content guides up prior to book 6 being released. We still don't have a title of book 6 as I'm filming this video, which is actually insane because we're about 2 months out. But I hope you enjoyed this review. I actually really enjoyed talking about this with you guys. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know other books and series that you want me to do. I do have a little bit of a backlist that I'm going to be going through because I want to make thorough guides on some of the books that I've already read on my shelf. But just let me know. Keep me updated, y'all. Let me know what you're thinking. And thank you so much for watching. If you have watched up to this point, it means a ton. And don't forget to subscribe so that you can continue to see these videos.